Hey, everybody, welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello, and today I've got Alan Lazaros with me. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to talk about peak performance.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to have you here, and I'm jealous of your bookshelf. We were talking about that. For those watching this on YouTube, his bookshelf goals, he's outnumbering the amount of books I can fit on my little, it's not even a shelf, it's like a dresser.
I see we've got some common ones. I see Awaken the Giant Within. I've got that one down there too. We probably have some books in common. And
Yeah,
also
I'm sure we
Secrets,
do.
Millionaire Secrets by Dean Graziosi. We both have that one.
Oh yeah, we do have that one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to sneak into that and just zoom in after the interview and see what books you have, because I'm always looking at what have you read that I haven't,
Right.
because that means you know stuff that I don't yet.
Right. I love that mentality. And I just realized in this moment, my girlfriend borrowed that book because we just interviewed him last week. So She actually has it at her place. So if you do zoom in, Millionaire Success Secrets are not there. Yeah.
Exposed.
Yeah, exactly. He's a liar already.
Yeah. Well, hey, Alan, great to have you on the show. How about you go ahead and just introduce yourself for my audience who may not know who you are just yet. Just what's your story? I have your bio pulled up on my computer, but I thought it'd be a little better if you just, went through it yourself.
Well, so the first thing that I typically would want to say is this isn't really about me, but I do think it's important to understand who you're talking to. Sometimes the messenger matters just as much, if not more, as the message. So I'll take you through what I hope will be the shortest version, but I also want to provide context. So it's easy kind of to connect the dots looking backwards and try to create sort of this narrative. And I'll try to give you the short version that I think will provide a lot of context into who I am today. But the first thing I'll say is that I was not always this man you see in front of you. We're all a work in progress, and I'm still, working on myself every single day. So when I was 2 years old, I always say I lost something very near and dear to my heart, but I also gained something else. So what I lost, my father passed away in a car accident when I was 2. And what I lost was obviously a father, which is near and dear to me. But what I gained was I was raised by 2 women. And my older sister, she's 3 years older than me, always took care of me. And then I had my mother. And so what's interesting is I feel like I'm a natural masculine energy, but was raised by a feminine energies. And so I feel like I have a pretty good righty and lefty. And that's ended up being very, very beneficial in the future of my life, not only in my relationships, but also in business. And so fast forward a bit, and my mom and I are in the car, and we're driving past WPI. So for those of you who don't know what WPI is, it's kind of like it's an engineering school. It's kind of like a mini MIT. And it's in Worcester, Massachusetts. And my mom's older sister was dating the track and field coach, married to the track and field coach, my uncle, Merle. And the track and field is actually still named after him to this day. It's Norcross Field. Awesome. But I was 10 at the time, and at the time, I didn't know she was doing this, but she planted a seed, a dream in my heart and in my consciousness. She said, Alan, you're really smart. You're really good at math. You love math. You should go to WPI one day. Now, what's interesting, and my sister and I still talk about this to this day, my mom never punished us. She lectured us. And we used to hate it, but it's one of those things that I now thank her for, because instead of just go to your room and then draw your own conclusions about why you're in trouble, it's, okay, I'm going to come into your room with you guys and teach you why things are the way they are, which is now kind of what the Hyperconscious Podcast is all about. If you know why things are the way they are, now you have the power to change them. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, that was one of the greatest things she ever did. Now, she said this one quote to me. She always had a good way of describing things to me. I was a little kid, and she said, Alan, you can be a CEO or you can be a farmer. I'm going to love you either way. She said, but if you choose and aim high to be a CEO, you can wake up one day and just decide to be a farmer, but you can't necessarily do it the other way around. And I one time told this story, and someone got all upset and said, farmers work so hard. I'm nothing against farmers. I was a little kid. My mom was she was basically saying, aim high. Life is about choices. You'll have choices. And she didn't focus too much on academics when she was younger, because she was the latest child. She was 17 years apart from the other one. She was, a young woman. And I think her parents, my grandparents, who have both since passed, kind of assumed she'd get married, have kids, and be fine. And my mom kind of always wished that she, applied herself academically so that she'd have more choices. So that's what she ingrained in me. Life is about choices. Do really well in school, and you'll have choices. Aim high. Okay. So that's kind of the start, and go to WPI one day. Now, fast forward, and we're doing my college essay at the tail end of high school. to get into WPI. I get in. It's awesome. I get an electrical and computer engineering degree. So for anyone out there who has an engineering degree, it was nothing short of brutal. Absolutely brutal. One of the hardest things I've ever done to this day. And it's interesting because in high school, I was that guy who like literally got like 1 B in all of high school. Everything else was A's.
Wow.
And then I go to WPI and I was like, oh my God. Like
I feel like people freaked out more. Like if you were an all A student in high school, you really freaked out in college because like getting all A's in college is a whole, especially in engineering, I would imagine. I did business, but I was always okay. Like, oh, cool, I got a B, or oh, I got a C. My life didn't change over it. I knew other people who were so used to getting all A's that like a B or a C, oh my gosh, they didn't come out of their, dorm for the whole week, right?
I went from like, ooh, 8th in my class, I'm so smart, to, oh my God, I'm the dumbest one here. No.
Oh yeah.
But engineering was brutal. I actually failed my first electrical and computer engineering course, so that was hard for me. But I persevered, graduated with high distinction, a 3.4 or something like that. And I go into corporate America. And I have this internship at a place called Tyco Safety Products. It's now called Simplex Grinnell. And I'm doing circuit design as an intern, and I'm an engineer, and I'm realizing, like, this isn't very fulfilling. I'm alone at a desk. I don't really like this very much. And I was very extroverted, which I'm sure you're already telling, and are able to tell both in high school and in college. And so, again, there's kind of a running theme here of, like, okay, soul searching. So I go back to WPI. And I get my MBA. So first my master's in marketing and technological innovation, then my MBA. Then I go back into corporate America, more soul searching. Okay. I job hopped a bunch. So I went to California for a time. I lived in LA trying to work in show business. I started my own company called Campus Libre for a while. I worked for iRobot. I worked for a company called Oz Development, small software startup. I worked for a company called Sensata Technologies as a global product manager at one point. Eventually I landed at a company called Cognex. Cognex is an excellent, I used to say it's like playing in the major leagues, excellent, exceptional company, just a lot of A players there, really great work ethic. And I started inside sales team there, and then I get promoted to outside sales. And now I'm managing all of outside sales for all of Western New England. Now at this point, I have what everybody, put it this way, I have what I believed was success. I had absolutely gorgeous girlfriend. I had the car, I had all of my friends from college, I had all my friends from corporate, I had all my friends from high school still. And I was a 1% earner by age 23. In 2014, I think I brought home nearly $200,000. And I paid off all my school debt. I paid off $84,000 worth of debt in 1 year, which was like a goal for such a long time. It was so cool. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I achieved a lot of my dreams. Why don't I feel, fulfilled? And so, long story long here, what I didn't talk about yet is that in high school I did some drinking. In college I did some more drinking. I was in a fraternity, very good social life there. Then I went into corporate and I was selling technical automation products. And Cognex's motto, and this is nothing against Cognex, because Cognex is awesome, is work hard, play hard. I used to say work hard, play harder. And so there's this vice that I keep using that is for fun, but it's starting to really get to me. So then there's the turning point. I'm 26 years old. It's 2016. I'm in New Hampshire. It's a dark winter night, cold winter night. I'm with my little cousin, and we're driving to TGI Fridays. I am supposed to stay right. The road actually stayed left. I was supposed to yield and didn't. I was looking down at the GPS. I look up, and I see the brightest lights I'd ever seen. And in this moment, for anyone out there right now, you've probably lost a loved one or lost a pet or had a near-death experience. I genuinely thought that this would be it. Now, fortunately, I was driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat to save money and to pay off all my debt. And it was a steel trap. I used to call it the tank. And so during my speeches, I show a picture of this car. This was not a fender bender. The whole car was totaled. Fortunately, both airbags did go off, and it was a steel trap, German engineering. Thank you. My little cousin hurt his knee. I hurt my face on the airbag, but generally speaking, we were okay. But emotionally, now circle back. I'm 26 at the time. My father passed away when he was 28 in a car accident.
Right.
And so I'm just sitting there like, whoa. So I'm questioning everything. As a matter of fact, I just got the chills telling the story. So I just had all this regret of like, I did everything that I thought I should do. And I'm just like, what if that was it? And so now what I tell people is that at the end of our life, you're going to ask yourself the following questions. And one thing I'll say too, a lot of us have an intellectual understanding of we're all going to die one day. But for me, and this is one of the other, I think there's a good thing in every bad thing if you search deep enough for it. And I think that for me, I've never had an intellectual relationship with death because my dad passed away and I've grown up my whole life hearing stories about John, that it was always emotional for me. And so this really hit home. This was my wake-up call. So I asked myself these questions, and I remember them vividly. Am I proud of the man that I became? How courageously did I fight for what I believe in? And then how fiercely did I love? And so I think all of us at the end of our life are going to really ask ourselves some version of those questions. And I did not like my answers. Now I use this analogy of shaking the snow globe. That really shook my snow globe. Everything I thought I knew got shooken up. And when this happens, if you allow yourself to sit in the emotional pain of that, I think what lands will be more of the truth, your unique truth. So now I say this quote, super simple, but super profound. You cannot see the stars during the day. They're always there, but sometimes it takes the darkness to see clearly that which you simply could not within the light. And so I say that quote because in that moment, I saw something I never saw before. Two things, actually. One was a book by Bronnie Ware called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. She's an Australian woman who worked in hospice for 8 years.
I've heard of this book.
It's a powerful, powerful book. I highly, highly recommend it. She also has a TED Talk as well. We actually have interviewed her, which was a dream come true, like 4.5 years later after this.
Awesome.
So cool. But she wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, and she worked in with the terminally ill for 8 years. She noticed these patterns. I wish, I wish, I wish. And so to this day, I have a flashcard in my pocket with all 5 regrets. I can go through them briefly. Number 1 regret of the dying is I wish I lived a life true to myself and not what others expected of me. Number 2 is I wish I didn't work so hard, which I actually got to ask her on the show if that was because of number 1. And she said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It was really cool. Because I love hard work, but I didn't used to. And I realized it's because now I'm living a life true to myself, right? If you're doing work that's true to your heart, I feel like you'll love hard work. If you don't, it's probably because you're not, in alignment. Number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my true feelings. That one's very difficult, especially when we're in love, intimate partner, business partner, whatever. Number 4, I wish I had let myself be happier. Let myself. And then number 5, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And so now, fast forward, I actually reverse engineer regret every day. I have a journaling habit where I ask myself questions and I rate myself from 0 to 10 on each of these regrets because I don't want to get to the end of my life and not like my answers again. That was the first thing, Bronnie Ware's book. Second thing I saw was Tony Robbins' TED Talk. Have you seen it?
I don't think I have. No, I've seen a lot of Tony Robbins stuff, and I watched like I'm Not Your Guru on Netflix, but I have not seen the TED Talk.
So his TED Talk, and I love TED Talks. I mean, talk about 40 years of someone's experience, sometimes 20, sometimes 30, and condensed into 18 minutes. It's just like the best. If you love to learn, TED Talks are the way. But his TED Talk, in my opinion, is the most valuable TED Talk on earth. Why? Is because it talks about the needs that are driving you, that are universal to all of us, and the syntax in them. And so I got clear on who I was, why I am the way I am, what I really want and why. And then I went all in on reverse engineering regret. I went all in my dreams. I went all in on staying true to myself. I went all in on having the courage to express my truth. Now, this was a hard transformation. We talk a lot about PTSD. Double yellow line scared me for a while. Ceiling fans, I was claustrophobic. Like I had some challenges. But we don't talk enough about post-traumatic growth. And so here I am 5.5 years later, and I'm all in on my mission now. And I feel like that's really what I'm here to tell people, which is living a life of growth and contribution true to yourself is where fulfillment lives. And if you're not, that's okay, because I wasn't at 1.2, but you can anytime you want.
That's awesome. Such a powerful story. I was actually just talking with my girlfriend about that the other day, is that I know when people have like a near-death legit experience, they can change their lives because like really they thought that was going to be it. And those questions start, because most of us, we all think we have time, knock on wood. I mean, anything could happen. Like a plane could come out of the sky and just like kill me in this interview, right? Like knock on wood, I hope that doesn't happen. But we always expect that it's not going to happen to us. It's always someone else. It's going to happen later down the road. I mean, I always hope and pray that like everybody that I know dies and they're asleep at an old, nice age when they're like ready to go and they're happy and fulfilled. But obviously it isn't always like that. I just had lunch with the lady today, and she said she's lived in a bunch of places like Singapore and Abu Dhabi, and she was saying she would visit Thailand quite a few times, and they were supposed to go when the huge tsunami happened in 2004. And I didn't even really know. I mean, I kind of had heard about it, but I had no idea that I think she told me 250,000 people were killed in that tsunami. And she was supposed to be on the beach, but they ended up changing plans because for whatever reason, they were still in the US at that time.
Wow.
And that's an example of when, other people were there at that time. They didn't know that there was going to be a tsunami. Like they didn't plan for it. It just got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, just, nature or whatever. And
Powerful.
They didn't have time. Some of those people didn't have time to like live their life fully and, do the things that they wish that they had done. So very powerful story. Thank you for sharing that. And how are you doing now? You said, so like ceiling fans, you had something with that too, like claustrophobia a little bit.
So for a while, double yellow lines, I remember getting pulled over because I was too far on the right side of the road because I was so scared to be on the wrong side for a while. Yeah. I got pulled over a bunch. And then I just told the police, I said, listen, I got in a car accident recently. I'm still dealing with it. And they were always very kind, fortunately. Right. But like, for a while there, I used to like literally lift my chest up and walk through the doorway back and forth just because I've since studied a lot of the neuroscience of this and I won't go too deep, but like whenever something traumatic happens, our subconscious mind tries to find whatever's similar. And sometimes what it links up is not correct. So one of the simple analogies I use is like, okay, so in 2012, I think I remember looking this up, 47,000 people in America passed away in motor vehicle accidents. And then I asked myself, okay, how many people died of spiders that year? And so what's interesting, it's like we're scared of spiders, right? But that doesn't make any sense. You're not going to really die of a spider. At least you're far less likely, right? So fears aren't rational. And once you realize that, you can kind of start to overcome them and then uncondition them through exposure therapy. And so now I don't have any of those challenges really. I shouldn't say none of them, but for the most part, I've worked through them through exposure therapy, walking through the door several times, right?
Yeah, and being more conscious of it too. Like if you're focused on it and you know how you're reacting and like why you're reacting, I think that really helps to push through it and get to the other side.
I think having a goal too is so important because if I didn't have this mission to really speak, to model, to podcast, to write books, to do all these things, like maybe I wouldn't have had the aspiration that would force me to get over that. And I think that's
you might still be like wallowing and stuck in it, right?
Exactly. I mean, I mentioned the alcohol thing, and one example is people ask me like, how did you overcome the alcohol addiction? Because that's something that's really challenging for a lot of people, and I've been there. And what I said is I chose something that I love that made alcohol more detrimental. So I chose to be, for lack of better phrasing, the greatest natural aesthetic men's physique fitness model on the planet. Okay, whatever. Big goal, right? Okay, fitness model, quote unquote. Now all of a sudden, drinking alcohol has a bigger downside. And so I love fitness. I embody fitness. That's part of my identity. Now all of a sudden, that helps me get over the alcohol because now there's more. If you want to do a marathon in 3 months, there's a lot more incentive to not skip a run than if you're not doing that. And so we think setting goals is to get the goal. No. That's the least important reason. The most important reason is the fears you must face, the growth you must have, all of those, the people you must meet, the things you must learn. So,
absolutely. So I know you said you do a lot of like peak performance stuff. Do you coach people on how to obtain peak performance and how to break through self-doubt and mindset? Like, do you have a certain thing that you focus on most, or is it kind of just specific to what your coaching client needs or what they're going through in their personal lives or their businesses?
Great question. Yes. So I have 10 full-time clients right now. Very, very blessed, especially because a lot of people are having hard times right now. And I just absolutely love that, everyone works in their life, but not everyone works on their life. And so I get to, from a bird's eye perspective, work on someone's life, which is really cool. What I will say is it's kind of both. So on one end, it's very systematized and I have a structure that I can describe. And then on the other end, it really is customized to each individual. So I can tell you what I do universally. I do 3 things primarily, and they're very simple. Number one, I help you get crystal clear on exactly what you want, not what you believe you can get, but what you actually really want. Okay. Number two, I help you create a daily system of success focused only on the top leverage points that will get you closer to that, reverse engineer that goal, that are congruent with your lifestyle, your core values, and your mission, your true north, strengths and weaknesses and all that.
Okay.
Number three, I help you track it day to day. I have what's called PPT, peak performance tracking, and we actually track your productivity and graph it over time. And so each of my clients have their own spreadsheet with what I refer to as the daily dozen, 12 things they do every day to keep momentum. And, 80% days, 20% days. Like before every call, I do an analysis of the previous week. I see where the fears and bottlenecks might be. I see where they're killing it. And then we dial in why. That said, everyone's daily dozen is different based on their unique core values and their unique lifestyle. And most importantly, their unique goals and dreams.
Awesome. So you work with them initially, I would imagine, to define what those daily dozen goals are.
So
that's the hardest part, right?
Right. So first we get clear on what they want for their decade. I take them through their ideal day in a decade from now. So, I remember doing this with a client, and it was like, is it lake or ocean? Who are you waking up next to? What are they like? What are their character traits? Do you know the exact person or whatever? Now, remember, this can evolve and change.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. It'll provide direction, which is what we all need for momentum anyway. And I take them through, when are you going to work? How far is your commute? Are you remote, or do you own your own business? Multiple businesses? What industry are you in, right? So first we get clarity. And here's the cool part. Once you start executing against your system, you start to learn, grow. And now your awareness is higher. So you end up evolving your vision. And so the vision is connected to the system. The system is connected to the vision, and it just keeps going. And week to week, we just tweak.
That's powerful. And I actually did a similar exercise in my notebook, my journal somewhere. I kind of mix my journal with things that I write down some notes here and there. And then I have like, okay, it's 1:32 p.m. I'm just going to journal what I'm feeling right now. It's been a crazy day. Let me just like get my thoughts out on paper. And there was a podcast I was listening to, and one of the entrepreneurs was saying, do this perfect day exercise, because when you do, like, get very specific, what kind of coffee are you drinking? What does your view look like when you're seeing the sunrise? Are you like in the mountains? Because I live in Texas right now. There's no mountains. In Houston, it's like, I don't have much of a view. I just see the neighbor's backyard. But on my perfect day, it would be like, oh, cool, waking up in Lake Tahoe or maybe in Denver, and I can see the sun rising in the mountains and the snow-capped mountains, right? Getting very, very specific. And when you do that, you define like, what is it that you actually want? Because a lot of people, they just wake up and they run out of the door and they start their day, right, and they have no idea, like, am I about to do something that I want to do, or that I'm just, in the system going through the motions?
And I think that's why a midlife crisis is a thing. When I had that car accident, I wasn't questioning myself along the way to double check and check in with myself whether or not
is this what I really want?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Asking yourself that question every day, is this really what I want? And I have this analogy that I say on stages and stuff is okay, imagine two people doing a puzzle. One of them can see the front cover, the other one can't. How much longer is it going to take the person who never saw the front cover to put the border together, to put the pieces down? And I say this, your daily actions are the puzzle pieces. Like, if I know what the vision, what the puzzle's supposed to look like, and I'm putting puzzle, I'm going to finish the puzzle way faster. I'm going to grow more. I'm going to learn more. And so it's interesting because I break it down into, I say this, there's 4 types of people. The first type is the person who wakes up in the morning and wings it. They just kind of go with what they feel like doing, right? Which, yes, I'm all for trusting your intuition, but be careful, because if you're in an unresourceful state, your intuition is going to say, eat that Big Mac.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a difference between pleasure and intuition.
Eat those donuts and skip the workout, right?
Exactly, man. Exactly, right? Yeah, just do what you feel. No, that'll drive you right off a cliff.
Follow your heart.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. You're an entrepreneur. I know you. You know how I feel about that. Okay, so number 1, you wake up and wing it. That's 95% of people probably, and I'm just making these numbers up.
Yeah.
Number 2, they do have a system, but it's not customized to their unique goals, their unique dreams, their unique core values, and their unique lifestyle. Why? Because they probably aren't clear on those things. I picture like a pyramid. On the bottom, you've got, your core values. On the top, you've got your mission and your goals. And then you've got long-term, mid-range, and short-term goals. And then the day-to-day is supposed to be in the middle of that, right? the third type of person, they do have a system. It is customized to their unique core values, their unique goals, their unique lifestyle, but they don't do it every day. They don't do it consistently. And then the fourth person is what I say we all should aspire to be, in my opinion, is the person who does have a system. It is customized to their goals, their core values, their lifestyle, and they do it every day. And if you do that, there's a simple book by John Maxwell. Maybe you've read it because I know you're a big book reader too. It's called Today Matters. Super simple. The secret to your long-term success lives in your daily routine. And
Awesome.
honestly, man, like that's I designed the perfect day and the perfect decade, and everything in between will take care of itself.
I haven't read that one yet. I've read a couple other. I think I've read 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership.
Yeah.
That's the main one I've read from him. I got to read some more. That one, I mean, I guess you just summed it up right there, is just having the perfect day. Because if you envision your perfect day, what would it look like? Visualize the perfect thing happening and just go about your day and have a plan, right? Don't just wing it. Because if you don't know what you want and you don't know what steps to take when you're working on that perfect day, it's just going to be hit or miss. Maybe you have a good day, maybe you have a not so great day.
Right.
But if you consistently, there's a book on here, I think, The Slight Edge, that talks about how you just keep on showing up every day. And I haven't read it in a while, but basically just from what I remember is that you continue to show up every single day, and over time your results compound. It's like that snowball that all of a sudden turns into this gigantic like avalanche of momentum,
right,
in a good way, towards your goals and your dreams, and just kind of pushes you to where you're trying to go.
Yeah, it's powerful. I tell this story too. I just went to my 10-year reunion, so I look very young. I'm hoping to hit puberty at some point.
Man, same here. Everyone's like, "You're turning 30 this year." I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, right. You and I. Who are these 12-year-olds talking about business, right? Right. So I'm actually 31, and I went to my 10-year reunion recently. And this is nothing against anyone in my high school, but I'll tell you what: if you look at what a decade can do of good choices versus bad choices,
I did the 10-year anniversary this last year too.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Like,
I was surprised.
Show me your friends, I will show you your future. Yeah, it gets drastic. Yeah. It gets drastic, man.
Some good, some not so good.
Right, and it comes down to choices. I mean, here's one thing I'll say too, just because it's when you are. I say this: emotional pain is guaranteed. What you do with it is not. Anytime you're in emotional pain, you're going to have an option, just like I did. You can either escape into a vice. Alcohol, drugs, Netflix, anything to escape the pain, or you can make a positive change, develop a virtue. And I think the amount of times you chose virtue over vice is going to make the difference of your life. I grew up in some really tough adversities that I don't want to go through, but I grew up with someone else who went through those things too, and our futures ended up very different. And I realized that I asked myself for the longest time, like, why did I make the right choice? Not always, trust me, not always, but why did I tend to make the right choice more often, the virtuous choice,
than this other person.
And I realized what it was. It came down to I believed in my own brighter future. And now I've started saying this. Why would Warren Buffett invest in a stock that he didn't believe would grow? You're not going to invest in your own personal development if you don't believe you can grow.
Right.
And I realized that's what it is. You got to inject belief. You got to get them to see the vision. I have a client of mine. She's a dear friend and a client, and she's actually on the Hyperconscious team. And literally 2.5 years ago, she Snapchatted me saying, I'm suffering with self-doubt. I want to go to school, but I don't know if I can do it. She recently was on the phone with me. She's actually my assistant, so she wouldn't mind me telling me this story. So she's my assistant. Her name's Amy. She's amazing. She and I were on the phone last week. True story. She said, Alan, I've got a 3.8 GPA. I've been on the dean's list 3 times, and I just want to read to you the recommendation letters that my professors just sent out. And she was crying in happy gratitude tears. And this person, when I first met her, was in self-doubt, wasn't even sure she could go back to school, didn't know where she was going to get the money. And now she's killing it. And she's like, you know what? I've always wanted to be a doctor of physical therapy. I'm going to do it. And it's like, What's interesting is why didn't that dream was always there. Okay? Why wasn't it consciously thought of? I believe that if you have self-doubt, if you have lack of belief, your dreams your mind's not going to let you hold them.
Right.
And then I look back at her data, peak performance tracking. One of her data points, one of the columns is looking at what she's grateful for and looking at her wins. She's got 100% for the last 21 days when I did this analysis. And I'm like, okay, she's looking at her wins. She's crushing her productivity. She's averaging like 85% days every day. And now all of a sudden she knows she can be a doctor of physical therapy. See, the reason why you don't believe in yourself if you're out there is because you're either listening to negative people or you're focusing too much on the problems or the things that are wrong about you instead of what's right. And I often say this, if you had a friend who broke as many promises to you as you've broken to yourself, how much would you value that friendship? You're not going to invest in a stock you don't value. You're not going to invest in a relationship you don't value. Start keeping the small promises you make to yourself, and I promise you, your belief will skyrocket, and all of a sudden those dreams that were always there when you were a kid will start coming back, and your mind will allow you to work on them.
Yeah, what you said right there is so true. And I've heard this said on a couple of podcasts before as well. I know we all kind of like learn ideas from each other and morph them into our own and then add on to them and whatnot. But I remember hearing this idea that just like what you just said is that if we can't even hold ourselves accountable, like if we know, okay, I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow. If you know deep down that you're not going to go and you don't set out your shoes and you don't get ready and you don't fill up your gallon of water bottle for the day or whatever, you're not going to do it. And then if you continue to let yourself down over and over again, then you won't even try because you know that you've let yourself down countless times before.
Right. But you don't want to feel that pain again. Yeah,
absolutely. And alternatively, like you were saying right there with Amy, was it?
Yeah, Amy. Yep.
And she's awesome. She sent me a video on Instagram DM. Yeah. That's how we got connected here today. So I did get that energy and self-confidence coming through the video camera and everything. But like you said, with her, she was tracking her wins. And as she starts to focus on the wins and like the gratitude, wow, you attract more wins. I think a lot of us fall into that hamster wheel of constantly grinding. I'm guilty of this too.
Oh yeah.
No matter how much I'm killing it, I don't look at how much I'm killing it. I look at what's like going wrong, right?
Right. It's a natural tendency. For sure.
Yeah. So when you focus on the wins, you actually appreciate, oh, I've come further than I really am giving myself credit for.
Right. Which gives you self-esteem, which is a good thing because
you need that.
When you have self-esteem, you're going to be more loving to others. I mean, dude, with what's going on in the world right now, I just think about it and it's like happy, healthy, productive, and fulfilled people don't want to hurt other people. Exactly. So I asked myself, like, what can I do to make a difference? Like, what can I do? And that's part of why why Amy reached out. I told Amy, like, I gotta go try to help people be more happy and productive. Cause I know that will help people not want to hurt others. And there's so much
good messages right now.
Yeah. There's so much hurt and so much pain and so much suffering. And I feel like personal development, I say ignorance and apathy. You either don't know any better or you don't care enough. And so what are the cures? Love, caring, and then knowledge, wisdom. And so that's what I want to just put out there, like constantly. It's like, if you don't have high self-esteem, you're most likely insecure. And we've all been in an unresourceful state where we were unintentionally unkind to someone we love. And so people think like, oh, do it for you. Honestly, do it for your loved ones. Do it for the people. Like, develop yourself, because if you don't, you're going to hurt those you love. And I know that that's a little bit of a weird, you don't hear that often. Like, do it for you. In entrepreneurship, do it for you. Don't do it for anyone else. Honestly, you got to do both. You got altruism and you've got selfishness, and you've got to integrate them. You will do more for others than you will ever do for yourself. I mean, right now, you and I, anyone listening, they can picture the one we love most in the world. I'm picturing my girlfriend right now. I would do what would you do for them?
Yeah, anything.
Why won't you do that for yourself?
Right.
Imagine if we could shift that. I told Kevin recently, my business partner, he's upset that I'm late sometimes. And I said, dude, I got to overcome this, because I was hurting him. I could tell I was hurting him, right? Because we interviewed Dean Graziosi, and I showed up 5 minutes before it, ready to rock. And he likes to prep more. I'm a little bit more by the seat of my pants. And we crushed the interview. Yeah, I know. Right. Well, we could talk about that for a while, but we're optimistic, right? So we tend to think we have more time than we need. We don't need to over prep. We're not very scared.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Exactly. Well, that ends up being, every strength comes with a weakness. I found that out the hard way.
Yeah.
So he likes to be prepared, get in rapport, make sure the technical stuff ended up being the blurriest interview ever. So we have a new studio. And on the camera, it was the first time ever using our $2,500 camera.
Did it have the film on it still?
On Zoom? No. It just, so we're using that camera in Zoom as a webcam, and we didn't figure out how to do the settings right. It looks like it was on an N64, man. Straight up. Dean Graziosi, it took us 2.5 years to get this man on the show.
And it came out like an N64 game, like GoldenEye. Or no, that's is that N64? Yeah, that was N64.
It was. And we have the 50-inch TV in the background, right, with the camera on the top of it. So we're looking, or no, at this time we actually switched this because of the pain of the Dean rep. Fail forward. The TV was like up on the like way above the camera, so it looks like we're looking like this, talking to Dean.
Oh no!
And dude, the
camera's here, but you're looking at. I try to line up the video because I have the same issue where sometimes I want to look at you, but the camera is like a little far apart. So if I look at you, my eyes on the video are going to be constantly looking like away from you.
Right.
It's very strange. Looking into the eye of the camera is essentially like looking into your the person you're talking to's eyes.
So important.
You live and you learn.
Yeah.
But what's important there is that you continue to, like you said, fail forward. You just learn, you iterate. Okay, next time we're going to lower the camera, right? And your next video is the one that is
much better now.
High level, I guess. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. So what else do you think that our audience needs to hear at this time? I know there's a lot going on. Like what's your idea of getting mental clarity and just being more empathetic towards others? And like, what should we be doing, you think?
So that's a great question. And I appreciate the free flow of this because so one of my clients and I, his name's Alex Hinkle, and I actually just got off a coaching call with him earlier today via call. And he's all about peak performance. Him and I are going to do some business consulting together. But we came up with this framework called the PMES system. And my girlfriend loves this framework so much. She has her own podcast called the Why Power Podcast. And she actually had me drop like a PDF with him because she wanted to give us credit because she references this all the time. So for your listeners, feel free to use this. Because I always wanted to understand human beings. I've always loved people. And there's so many facets of the human. And I always wanted to figure out what makes us different, and then how do I get along with each type of person and communicate with each of them? Because I was in global product management, and I had all of the responsibility of growing a $20 million revenue, and I got called out for that. Like literally, Alan, we're hoping you grow this revenue. And then I'm like sitting there like, I don't have any authority though. So it's like I have to work with Q&A, and I have to work with the marketing, and I have to work with the engineers. I have to make sure every manufacturing in Mexico, all this stuff. But I have no authority over anyone, so influence just was like what I needed.
Andrew Young, which is like, I know a lot of these people are twice our age oftentimes in manufacturing roles. I worked at a manufacturing role as well. So hey, Richard, your son's my age, but can you do this, right?
I know, and I don't have the authority, right? So I actually
way more
wore
than
glasses on purpose to try to look a little older, like painting gray hair. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you don't want to have an ego, but you also need to know that they need to know you know your stuff. So then you just end up puffer fishing, right? It's a whole thing. So anyways, I've always wanted to understand humans. PMES system, super simple. So picture an iceberg, and the top is P, the physical.
Okay.
Underneath it is M, the mental, then E, emotional, then the bottom is S, spiritual. PMES, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Okay. I tell a quick story to kind of articulate this. Manifestation and the purple elephant. What does that mean? Right? There's the hook, guys, right? Okay. I'm imagining in my imagination the spiritual, a purple elephant with a double barrel shotgun and a cowboy hat on. Now, if you're picturing that right now, yours is different than mine is different than yours. Okay. That only exists in the spiritual.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I emotionalize it and I say, okay, that's my purple elephant. That's my vision. Okay. Now I strategize. How am I going to create this? I get a crayon, I get paper. Okay, now I take action and I start doing it. I start getting better at drawing. Okay, here it is. Now it's a physical thing. You ever hear of Barney? Everything in the world.
With the shot? Did you say shotgun?
Yeah. No, Barney doesn't have a shotgun.
I was like, wait, I didn't see this episode as a kid.
Yeah, no, dinosaur. It's dinosaur versus elephant. I know, it's a disconnect. I got to work on that. But here's the point. I took something in my imagination that only existed in the spiritual, in my imagination, in my thoughts.
Right.
And I emotionalized it. I strategized about how to create it. And then I took physical action to make it a reality. Everything around you right now, if you're in a home, was at one point just a thought in someone's imagination.
That's awesome.
So we see the physical, right? So Tom Brady, we see him on the podium holding the trophy for 30 seconds. We don't see the 30 years it took him to get there.
Yes.
So we're seeing the physical at the top of that iceberg. We're not seeing the strategies that he implements every single day on the M side, mental, the strategies. We're not seeing the emotional resilience that it took to be him. 2007 getting injured, or 2008 rather, all that. And then the spiritual in terms of his dreams and his imagination, he imagining himself as a little kid as a football quarterback, right? So we only see the physical and we focus there, but that's actually the least important piece, right? I remember this one time I was giving a speech to a group of high school athletes at Medway High School. And I put up a PowerPoint of Tom Brady holding the trophy. And this was not long after his 6th Super Bowl, right? And I'm like, we're in New England. Everybody loves Tom Brady. Who here loves Tom Brady? Every hand shoots up, right? And then the next slide, Tom Brady's book. Who here has read Tom Brady's book? Every hand shoots down. I say, see, we both love Tom Brady, but we love him for very different reasons. The TB12 method, how to sustain a lifetime of peak performance. Aren't you curious? See, you love Tom Brady because he's good at football. I love Tom Brady for his habits, for his consistency, for his discipline, for his leadership. See, it's not about just the message, it's the messenger. You have to understand why you admire something. You can't admire Tom Brady and then none of the character traits that develop Tom Brady. I mean, I could literally, one of the most valuable things I could probably do for your listeners is name a few names. Eminem, Tom Brady, Oprah Winfrey, Tiger Woods, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Those 5 people, everyone knows their name. They all got good at one thing. If you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, you got good at several.
You got good at everything.
Several. Yeah, true. Yeah, true. But like, that's the thing that I think is fundamentally misunderstood. Eminem got good at rapping. Oprah got good at interviewing people. Thousands of interviews on the Oprah show. Tiger Woods got really good at golf. Warren Buffett got really good at investing. The things we think we want are actually byproducts of something far deeper. I have one mentor, dear friend of mine, who was actually the COO of iRobot when I was working there. And he's actually since been the CEO of several like billion-dollar tech companies. And I remember realizing some simple truth. He just bought a car. It's a $85,000 Mercedes. I don't care about cars at all. If you do like cars, that's awesome. But what's interesting to me is that he just bought this car. It's like a really nice car. He was excited to show it to me and all this stuff. And I was like, what's interesting is that most people would love to have this car. And I can tell that you never really even cared about cars. The fact that he can afford an $85,000 Mercedes on a whim is because he was focused on mastering business. And the car is a byproduct of that. If his goal was to get the car, he might not have ever got. That's very different than the goal being, I want to be the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company. You see, one of them, the things we think we want are actually a byproduct of something far deeper. And that's why I love that iceberg, because you got to understand the imagination, spiritual. You got to understand the emotional resilience, the emotional intensity, the belief systems, the conditioning, the emotional. You got to understand the mental strategies that it actually takes to do what you do. Again, Tom Brady's book, if you look at his habits. And then the physical, taking action every single day. And so I think that's the whole. And I think that's what people need to hear. And that's what you originally asked me. What do people need to hear? First of all, there's no right or wrong answer. We all have a code. For me, it's MPES, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. Some people are more emotionally driven. Some people are more results driven. There's no right or wrong. And I think one of the things that's causing so many problems in the world right now is that we're looking at spiritual people and thinking that's wrong. We're looking at, mental people and thinking that's wrong. We're looking at people that are emotionally driven and saying that's wrong. There's no right or wrong. We're all unique. And if we can have empathy for each person's uniqueness and then actually collaborate effectively and communicate effectively, I think that's where real change is going to happen.
Absolutely. And it's a balancing act. I mean, I shared this on a recent episode. I just had a first therapy coaching type session with a licensed therapist, I guess is her title. And it was just more for me to ask these questions. I'm always go, go, go mode. I don't ever stop to think why am I thinking like this, or why am I doing what I'm doing? Right. And the funny thing is that my mom was joking, oh, you don't have to pay a therapist whatever, per hour. You could just do it with me for free. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, but no offense, but you don't have the training and you haven't gone to school. You don't have your PhD or whatever to ask the types of questions that, psychologically, like you were saying earlier, these types of questions that trigger different parts of your brain to think certain ways and help you to move forward. So it was a really eye-opening session. I mean, one thing that she mentioned was like, what if you left the Matrix? I mentioned the Matrix because I'm a big Tom Bilyeu fan, and he's like a fan of the Matrix.
I'm a big fan too. I saw him live at Brendan Burchard's event. He was amazing. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's awesome, man. When did you go? High Performance Academy?
So 2018. So 2018 was High Performance Academy. 2019 was Influencer. Awesome, and Tom Bilyeu was at 2019. So
yeah, man, I love Tom, but like Tom always talked about the Matrix and how we're all in this Matrix, and then you unplug from the simulation. And she threw me for a loop when she's like, "Do you think that you unplugged from one Matrix and plugged into another one?" And I was like, I never thought about it like that, but like, yeah, I guess so. Because when I had this awakening of I don't want to work in this day job, kind of like you, I went through school and I got this job, and then when I was there, I was like, my whole life led to this moment that I had that existential crisis. Like, I don't want to be here.
Right.
And so I just shifted everything, and I started asking myself, what do I want? Like, okay, first of all, freedom. So quitting the job, putting in my 2 weeks. Right. And then second of all, like financial freedom. So I'm like, okay, I shouldn't have quit so soon. Like, I don't have another source of income. But it got me started on that journey and starting to read books and starting to just figure out, what do I want? And I think one of the things that's most difficult for people to balance is that hunger to achieve all their goals and more, but also being able to be satisfied with what they have and share the wins. Like, what have I accomplished?
Right.
Because otherwise you're just deferring things until I get this goal in the future. Like when you said you got the car and then you realized like, oh man, this isn't even, I'm still not fulfilled. Like I'm missing something. What is that thing?
Right.
So just playing that balancing act of emotional, physical, mental, and what was the other one? PEMS?
So spiritual? Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. The four facets of the human condition.
So balancing all those things. And then a lot of people aren't going to therapists, or they're not asking themselves these questions. They're just reacting, or maybe they're getting emotional and their ease very strong, their emotions. They just make decisions based on emotion. I know a lot of people like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Others maybe make too much decision on logic, and maybe they aren't that empathetic.
Right.
I kind of admit to doing this sometimes too, where I'm like, okay, I need to not be so logical. I need to understand that other people may be hurting emotionally. And for whatever reason, I'm just like, oh, I don't see why are your feelings hurt? This is like a logical decision to me.
Yeah.
So it's something that we all have to be cognizant of for sure.
Yeah, I think understanding your own code will help you tremendously. And again, this isn't the first time. I mean, there's bank code. There's like, this is just one version, but I can tell you're M first. M's tend to be future oriented. They tend to be goal oriented. They tend to care about results more than the experience.
Exactly.
When you go get a coffee, you're probably looking for the caffeine more than how it tastes, right?
Right.
And so once I understand that, I can M with you. So me and you can go mental all day. And
yes,
once you understand a code, now you can communicate in the other person's language. Like if I went to my, millionaire CEO friend, who's I know is a hard M, and I start talking about how I feel, it's going to turn him off. But if I do, if I'm with an emotional person and I'm just talking about results all the time and how great my podcast is, right? So you just have to understand the room you're in. And that's why I asked you for this interview, like who are your listeners, right? Because I think that the goal is to communicate effectively. It's not ever to judge or to hurt, or it's just to influence in a positive direction.
For sure. And that's extremely helpful in sales as well. I mean, and then let's be real, like even if you're not really in sales, you're kind of in sales. If you're trying to sell yourself, or we're all in sales. I mean, even when you're convincing your girlfriend or boyfriend to be with you, like you got to sell them, right?
Yeah. You have to communicate effectively your value in a certain
build regard. The value and build the relationship and the trust. And then you make the sell or the close or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
But it's interesting because we're all so different, and you have to cater. Like you can't be very strong. Like if you're talking to an introverted person and I'm just the extrovert dominating the conversation, that's not going to go over well because they're going to feel drained that they had to listen to me talk the whole time. And so just, being cognizant of like, what are they and how do I match their style?
Right.
And that can be difficult if you're high energy and someone's like more mellow, just like, mirroring them and not being fake or not being yourself, but like making them comfortable. Right. So whether you're in sales or whether you're just trying to be a good person to like the person in the grocery line behind you, we need to be aware of all these things for sure.
Yeah, we need to be aware of them. That's huge.
Awareness, I think, is the thing that a lot of us are lacking. People just do stuff. They just, like I said earlier, they may be emotional. They just do things without thinking about how does this impact others, right?
Right.
So when you're aware, sometimes I'm too aware where I'm like, I wonder what that person thinks, or I like to people watch, right? Like, what are you thinking right now? And what did you think when I said this? But I don't know. I digress.
I don't think too. I'm like that too, man. I want to understand everyone and everything, and my insatiable curiosity. I'm like that too. I don't think you're too aware. I think you want to learn. I think
I
that's
want
a
to
beautiful
learn. That's
thing.
the thing.
Yep.
And sometimes it's crazy to see when people are just so rash with their decisions. They just do stuff without thinking, and they don't seem to care. And we all have different backgrounds and upbringings, right? So it's hard for me to relate to someone who's had that crazy struggle upbringing, or you hear of the stories where they were like eating out of dumpsters when they were kids, or sleeping in a car because they got kicked out of their house. Like, how do I relate to that situation when I never experienced it?
Right.
And likewise, how do I relate to the rich kid who just got out of like the $10 million house in Texas that's like huge. In Houston, 10 million is probably like a small house in California, but
yeah, right.
But here you're pretty good.
It's like a shack. No.
Yeah, it's like a shack in California, right? So how do I relate to that kid who all they know is luxury and like not a servant, like a butler or whatever the word, and it's just different realities that we're all in, right? So kind of like what you said, I love what you said earlier of imagining like everything in this room, everything we have started out in someone else's mind and it became real. They thought about it, they drew it out, they planned it, and then they made it physical. And so just learning how to stretch like those goals that seem impossible for us, how do we make those real? And like you said, jot them down, make daily goals. And the daily dozen, was it 12?
Daily dozen, yep.
How do we come up with that daily dozen and then measure and track and have someone like you, Alan, to hold us accountable? Because we can make the daily dozen and bury that spreadsheet somewhere on our desktop, right?
Oh, yeah.
But having someone actually keep us accountable to it and check in on it and use it daily, that's what really makes a transformation.
I have noticed that. It's interesting because I ask my clients eventually. I'm very fortunate at this point I track everything. So I just surpassed like 365 coaching calls, one-on-one coaching calls. I used to do fitness. Now I do peak performance, business, personal and professional development. And I've found the accountability is the most valuable. I'm
huge.
Looking at this spreadsheet, you know it. I'm sending you weekly and monthly updates about it. And I know when you're off and I know when you're on, and when you're off, we're going to figure out why and get you back on. And then we're going to make small tweaks along the way. And it's unbelievable what can happen. To me, I just love to see people succeeding, because once they succeed, they're like, oh my God, what else can I do?
Right.
Oh my God. And then they're happy and they make other people happy. And it's just this huge positive thing that makes me super
The accountability
happy.
piece, that's the part that is huge. And even with fitness, I'm sure you saw this with training people, that's what they need. They kind of know the workouts, or they can look them up on YouTube. But if you're not there telling them to do burpees for an extra 20 seconds, they're probably not going to do it. Like most of us will just stop when it hurts.
Because we'll do more for others than we'll do for ourselves, especially if you're emotionally driven.
Exactly.
Yep.
Super powerful. Well, I know we're nearing the end of the hour here. I wanted to give you an opportunity. Was there anything that you thought, any last words that our audience should take away from today's talk before we let them know where they can reach you?
I would say where they can reach me, I'll go into after. The last thing I would say is this. I think we have a fundamental misunderstanding of the word philosophy. You know, you and I, you hear philosopher, right? You think of Lucius Seneca or Marcus Aurelius or you know, Aristotle, right? But honestly, we are philosophers. That's what we just did on this call. What is a philosophy? A philosophy is a principle, a guideline to live by. And there's a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I'm sure you've read it.
Yep.
And it's an amazing book. And he talks about a pleasure-centered life, a family-centered life, a work-centered life, all these different centers of life. And he says, and then he goes through the pros and cons of each, right? If you have a work-centered life, you're probably successful but not fulfilled. If you have a family-centered life, you're probably fulfilled but not successful. If you have, you know, a pleasure-centered life, you're probably going off the rails, right?
Dan Bilzerian.
Yeah, right. He says a principle-centered life is the only one that's long-term win. And I would say to your listeners, if there's nothing else you take away from this conversation that we just had, there is no quick fix. There is no right or wrong, but there is right for you. Whatever the philosophy is that you decide to live by, stick to it, you know, and use that inner compass. I think of Jack Sparrow with the compass. There's that scene, right? where he's literally like in the storm and Orlando Bloom's like talking to Mr. Gibbs and he's like, I don't understand. How are we supposed to get to an island no one can find with a compass that doesn't point north? Mr. Gibbs is like, doesn't point north, but we're not trying to find north, are we? And it's like,
right.
If you were holding that compass, where is that pointing? What's the mission? What's the goal? What's the island that no one else can see? And by the way, when you start sailing that way, expect everyone else to be like, where are you going?
Yes. You're going the wrong way.
Right. No, it's because you can't see the island that only I can see. That's your dream. That's your vision. That's your goal. And what if you getting there and ignoring the naysayers along the way who say you can't do it or shouldn't do it or whatever? What if there's more love for you on that island, self-love, and love from others? I mean, my girlfriend right now, I remember telling the universe that I wanted to be with someone more ambitious than me because I felt misunderstood in my past relationships. And I got it, man. And it's like unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Now that comes with its own challenges, right? Because all we both want to do is just like work all the time, right? But like, I'll tell you what, have the courage to ask the universe for what you really want. Don't worry about the how yet. That will come. Have the courage to ask the universe for what you really want and then go towards that island and ignore the naysayers. I don't care if that's the body of your dreams. I don't care if that's the financial life of your dreams, the house of your dreams. Like, it is possible. And anyone who says it's not, that's their opinion. It's not a fact.
Absolutely. Very powerful stuff. So where can our audience go to learn more about you, to connect with you, and to check out your podcast?
So thehyperconsciouspodcast.com. We just got our website redesigned. I call it the Big Six. So you can reach out on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, LinkedIn, or...
Website?
No. Facebook, LinkedIn,
TikTok.
Instagram. No. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Snapchat. Okay, here's what I'll do. LinkedIn or Instagram.
You'll find everything else.
Look up Alan Lazaros. Yeah, you'll find everything else. And at ALazaros88, please reach out on Instagram. That's actually the best place to reach me. Between my assistant or myself, we answer every single DM. If you want help in anything, even if I personally can't help you, I can guarantee you I know someone who can. Or at least can point you in the direction of a podcast that will help you or a book that will help you. So please reach out.
That's perfect, man. I really appreciate that. And that's something that's really powerful. What you just said there is that you're not just trying to help a specific person, you're trying to help anyone. And if you don't know the answer, you can at least point them to who does, or at least a resource. We want to take Alan up on this offer for sure. And, there's no such thing as a dumb question. I mean, sometimes it's on the fence, but but you might as well ask, because if you don't ask, you'll never receive. So, Alan, it was amazing having you on the show. Thank you for all your knowledge and your wisdom, and for sharing your story too, because there's some vulnerable parts in there, and just seeing how much you've accomplished and the things you've overcome is really impressive.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And again, reach out anytime. I really enjoyed this. This was awesome.
Absolutely. Likewise. And let's stay in touch, man. I want to continue to hear your story and your progress.
We definitely will.
Awesome. Take care, man.
Talk to you soon.